Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Seconds. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Good day, Cavs fans, and welcome to another episode of the Block, the Shot, the Stop podcast, our weekly NBA Weekly Edition. Today, I have a couple of very special guests, fellow members of the Blue Wire Media podcast family, the hosts of Green with Envy podcast, covering the Boston Celtics. Talk a little bit about the big game here Tuesday night. Weir, Greg Maneikis. I'm sorry, I did butcher your name.
We just talked about it backstage.
God, guys, I'm so sorry.
Maneikis, Maneikis, baby, Maneikis and Weir. You can always come check us out. Green with Envy. That's sticking for sure.
The worst thing, before we talk basketball, the first, the worst thing anyone's ever called me, just making fun of my last name because it is hard to pronounce. Obviously, all the jokes with Maneikis are there. But I used to work in a special needs school in a classroom, and I was working with this kid. He was hilarious. His name was Noah. He had Down syndrome, and we were on a bus ride on a field trip one day, and he just looks at me, and he just goes like Mr. Man Piss. And then he just starts dying laughing, and he's like looks me dead in the eye and just calls me, "Your name is Mr. Man Piss." And that's the worst I've ever felt. Somebody calling my last name and mispronouncing it. But shout out to Noah, miss you, buddy. That was about a decade ago.
Shout out Noah. Thanks for making me not the worst, just maybe in the top five. But in all seriousness, really appreciate you guys popping on the podcast today. Talk a little bit about this game Tuesday night. And while we want to talk about the game Tuesday night, it's going to be one of the biggest games in the NBA season so far. I did want to start with the two of you to kind of just talk a little bit about the Celtics season to this point, how it compares to last year. I mean, last year they were like the best team in the league, pretty much wire to wire, paid it off in a championship. This year, they've more been one of the better teams, but maybe not quite as dominant. Like, Will, I'll start with you. Where do you think the Celtics are this year opposed to maybe last year?
So it's interesting, right? Because it's been a while since the Celtics have come off a championship. So we're trying to figure out, and very similar to the Cavs, Celtics just brought back their team, right? So this is usually in the NBA, there's so much turnover. This is all the same team back. Of course, we don't have Kristaps Porzingis yet. So right now, at least, especially from Greg and I's perspective of covering the team, it's trying to figure out what's new, what's different, what's a wrinkle that, Joe Mazzulla has thrown in, what's a development that we can kind of feel out from an individual perspective. And so, for this team right now, they've got a few flaws. I think right now I feel very confident. Like if we're projecting as to where this team's going, I have absolute confidence as of right now that I feel like this team is still the team to beat in the NBA. I'm with you. I don't know if definitively, if we're doing a quick power rankings of in the moment, are they number one? Maybe not, but they're 2, 3, or 4. No lower than 4 could you possibly get without putting the Celtics. And knowing that we have a 7-3 Latvian lurking in the background that's about to pop onto the screen in the next couple of weeks here. We see him shooting jump shots before every game. We get clips filling up our feed constantly. So we're feeling good about that. So from a Celtics perspective, still feel good. There's definitely some holes that I think they need to fill, whether it be the interior defense. Points in the paint have been killing the Celtics, especially over the last several games or so. That's going to be things that we keep an eye on. But then again, like I said, with Kristaps Porzingis lurking, you're wondering, is that just what solves this problem? Right. But of course, you're going to worry about his injuries. So I think right now, Celtics are in a pretty good spot, and it's been a fun season. And when you got a guy like Joe Mazzulla at the helm, you're just never at a loss for content.
I really enjoy his press conference. You can see like how he's just more comfortable in his shoes the more like he uses humor in podcasts, or I'm sorry, in press conferences. But Greg, turn to you. Like the thing that I, as an outsider to the Celtics, and I think a lot of other outsiders have noticed, this team more than a typical team coming off a championship has a chip on its shoulder. Some of that was like Tatum in the Olympics and Brown not being selected, and a couple other storylines. But like you all being closer to Celtics, do you notice that? Are they playing and acting like a team that really has a chip on their shoulder despite coming off a championship?
I think early in the season, the answer would probably be yes. But to me, it's more just like a freedom that they're playing with now that they don't have the weight of bringing home banner 18 on their shoulders. And that's everybody in the organization, right? There's just a lot more Joe Mazzulla, as you mentioned. He's more humorous in his, or maybe we're just getting used to his sense of humor. Like before, we didn't realize he was trying to be funny, but now we kind of get it.
To be honest, Greg, I don't even think he's trying to be funny. I think we think it's funny. I don't think he's trying to be funny.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I think like little things that you'll see, like last year, a lot of people were kind of clamoring for him to play Neemias Queta a little bit more, and he just didn't really play him. He was a two-way guy for the Celtics. He actually started like 6 of the last games for the Celtics. He's been playing really well. But like little things like that, being able to trust Queta to play crunch time for the Celtics, empowering Peyton Pritchard to come off the bench and shoot 30-footers like the moment he steps onto the court, and running the offense a little bit more through him, giving Jordan Walsh a little bit of run, even if it's just 5 minutes a game here or there. Celtics fans never saw Jordan Walsh last year. I think he played like a total of 3 or 4 games for the team, in games that actually mattered. So these little things like that, and that kind of gives you a sense of where Celtics fans are at as well, because I just mentioned Neemias Queta, Peyton Pritchard, and Jordan Walsh before I mentioned any of the stars on the team. Right? And that's kind of where we are. We're looking for those little bits of internal development that we can get excited about, because covering the team this year, man, I'll tell you what, it's a lot less stressful than it was last year, because we're just here like defending the championship. And I think that's what's most fun about this. And I think the guys are having a lot of fun too.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm interested, Will, like you said, the Celtics and Cavs are similar in the sense that they pretty much brought the same teams back from last year. Knowing that, what's different with the Celtics this year? Is there any style of play, anyone contributing more or less? Obviously, other than Kristaps being out, like what do you see as being different with the Celtics this season?
Yeah, well, first of all, Greg, it's attacking the championship. Remember, we gotta go with the Joe Mazzulla verbiage here, attacking the championship. But yeah, it's a good question, Kev. You know, like as far as like what's different, I hate to reiterate something that Greg said, but I think it's them playing with that weight off their shoulders. And so with that, you're seeing, Jason Tatum came in with myself, one of the first people included here, who was panicked about, did Jason Tatum break his jump shot between the playoffs and the Olympics? And that thing's just fine, right? We're literally recording this after he hit a game-winning 3-point shot against the Raptors in overtime last night. And so for the Celtics, I think they're just playing more free. I think maybe it's a little bit newer, but one of the things that really sticks out that Greg and I on a recent show were talking about, just it feels like something good's about to happen. A lot of Derek White, Jason Tatum pick and rolls, and that can be inverse. They can switch who's the ball handler, who's the screener, but things like that just feel like something good is about to happen right now. And so with the Celtics, a little bit of what's new with them is actually kind of what's old with them. It's because of the familiarity that you can tell when this team is kind of in their pocket, right? When they have the ball movement going, when they have Mazzulla ball, which I think Mazzulla ball gets mistaken as just, oh, you shoot a bunch of threes. No, it's advantage basketball. It's how do we find advantages at all times? And I mean, literally at all times in this game, Joe Mazzulla will try to find a way to have an advantage. And that can be on the wing. That can be in transition. That can be, defensively with whatever they're doing, or how they're trying to set up matchups, or how they're trying to attack certain matchups. I think we call Greg the coach of the podcast, so I want to get him in here on this, because I think, from that sense, he may have a few more things to add, but I think it's the looseness and the confidence in which the Celtics have played, that it's just at a different level, because there isn't this tension of what does this mean if Derek White takes 12 threes and only makes 3 of them tonight? What does that mean? What? Ultimately, it means nothing, because he's a champion. Jaylen Brown is an NBA Finals MVP. Like, we're not going to sit here every night and be like, is he going to hit a big free throw for us? I mean, he still might not, but we're going to trust him with the ball in his hands. So I think for me, that's what sticks out the most. But Greg, from a strategic standpoint, you may have some other things that jump out to you. I
mean, like they're running more Ram actions, I guess, just to kind of create space between. They did this a lot under Ime, actually. Their Ram screens were huge for them where they would screen. So ram screen, just for your listeners, in case they don't know, it's when you set a screen for the screener coming up into the pick and roll to kind of create a little bit of distance. So you can sprint into the screen so that the defender guarding the screener isn't up to touch, right? There's a little bit more space where you can create off of that. So they're doing a little bit more of that. Kada has been a revelation as a screener. Like anytime Kada is involved in a screening action, it seems like something good happens. I think an understanding of Missoula ball and just like everybody understands the assignment on the team, which is to get as many 3-point shots up and get open 3-point shots up. I think the Cavs are actually tops in the league or close to it in terms of field goal percentage on wide open threes and generating a lot of them. But the Celtics do a pretty good job of that as well. And then just like internal development, Jason Tatum, for example, last year, he wasn't even in the top, like, I think 50 players in terms of efficiency and isolation. And this year he's top 10. Drew Holiday is also top 10, and Derek White. Wow. I'm just looking at it right now. Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Jason Tatum are all top 10 in isolation efficiency. Jaylen Brown is the best post-up player in all of basketball this year. I don't know if you knew that, but anytime we throw the ball to Jaylen Brown in the post, he's, I think, 98th percentile. OG Anunoby is 100 percentile, but that changed recently. I mean, Anunoby doesn't often get, like, they don't throw the ball to Anunoby to create. We throw the ball to Jaylen Brown to get double teams. He gets fouled on 46% of his post-ups. He gets fouled. Like, he's an absolute monster down there. So I think that's something, as a Cavs fan, I would be interested to see how much the Celtics run like little wedge screens just to get Jaylen Brown in the post. They run a lot of punch actions with just like direct post entry off the wing to Jaylen, just to let him play bully ball. Because I don't know how much you follow Jaylen Brown, but he was already a great athlete, already super strong. He was working so hard this summer to add extra muscle, and he, like, nobody can handle his physicality in the post, and it's showing. He's literally the best post-up player in basketball.
Yeah, to answer your question, Jaylen Brown's one of my top 5 non-Cavs in the league. I actually love watching him, and I was the one last year on the previous NBA podcast I did. I was trying to tell people Derek White was a top 10 point guard in the NBA if you're interested in winning games. And my co-host and every listener disagreed with me. And then I think my argument's getting stronger by the day. I have so many Joe Mazzulla quotes I would love to talk to you about, but in the interest of time, we'll have to talk again, because I find Mazzulla so interesting, because he went from maybe the biggest question mark as far as coaching in the league 2 years ago to now thought of as maybe one of the strongest coaches in the league, and an amazing transformation. But I did want to talk a little bit about the game Tuesday night and everything. And start with you, Will. Like, where are the Cavs on the Celtics radar? Are the Celtics and their fan base starting to think like, man, the Cavs, that might be our biggest competition, getting to another finals as far as the Eastern Conference goes? Are they not really kind of believing the start that the Cavs are having the first 3 weeks? Do they think the Cavs match up well or don't match up well against them? Like, where do the Celtics, where does Celtics Nation view the Cavs, as far as competing against the Celtics?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think how Tuesday night goes, win or lose, if it's a tight game that goes either way, I think that will have a pretty major impact on how they feel about the Cavs kind of going forward. Because, like Greg said, we forget about it, but they did match up in the playoffs. But, there was no Jared Allen. Mitchell, I think, played 2.5 games or whatever it was before he was out. And so, even you think back to the regular season, 2 years ago, I think it was, where we played two home game series against the Cavs. The Cavs won both of those games, I believe. And, Donovan Mitchell had kind of an electric ending to one of them. So I know for me personally, the Cavs are already on that radar with the way that they're playing. I'm very interested to see how this matchup plays out. I would say for Celtics fans overall, I think it's probably still, my guess would be it's still being a little bit slept on. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see what this matchup on Tuesday night looks like, because as we just talked about with Jaylen Brown, him hunting Darius Garland in the post is like the number one thing offensively that I'm looking for from the Celtics to attack as far as advantage ball and Missoula ball, and see what you result from that. But then inversely, like I talked about, we can't protect the paint right now. now. So I think for your two bigs down there, if Darius Garland, who's kind of the water bug type point guard that can give us trouble, if he's getting in the lane, being able to throw alley-oops to Mobley or Allen, Mitchell's always going to be able to get downhill just because he is kind of that top 15-ish type guy in the league. We know who Donovan Mitchell is. I think the Cavs do present some problems, but I think ultimately for me, and this is always what's left me reserved about the Cavs, is you have a great top four. I'm still unsure about that fifth spot, about how you're going to match up, and especially once the Celtics added Holiday, we get Porzingis back, and then 1 through 5, 1 through 6. I just think it's so overwhelming that I'm not there yet. That I think the Cavs could certainly put up a fight because I think they can attack some of the holes in the Celtics. But when you look long term, they're right there. I still think the Knicks have a chance to get it together, but the East is just crazy messed up right now. So looking at it from that lens, the Cavs, Magic, and Knicks are three teams I think, and this is the Magic getting Paolo back, of course, that I think I look at right now that I think they pose the biggest challenge when we look towards the end of the season. But I think how this game goes on Tuesday night will have a long-term impact as to how Celtics fans feel overall about the Cavs.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And Greg, I just want to get your perspective before we get out of here. What are you looking for in this first matchup of the Celtics Cavs this season and potentially more matchups down the road?
I think it's Evan Mobley guarding Jason Tatum. He's had a little bit of success in possessions past. I wouldn't even say years past. There have been a few times where Mobley on Tatum has just been interesting to me. Because I think he has the physicality to give Tatum a little bit of problem. Tatum loves getting his shoulder in on a drive. He gets his shoulder into people. He can't do that to Mobley because the length is just going to envelop him. Tatum's probably going to end up settling for too many step back 3-pointers against Mobley. Can Mobley, if I think Mobley could block those shots, I think he's capable of just making Jason Tatum very uncomfortable out there on the perimeter. And then if the Celtics have their starting five, we saw this last year where Tatum was guarding Mobley in the playoffs. And by the end of the series, he couldn't do anything with him, right? Mobley was just kind of giving it to Tatum. And Tatum, in the finals, he guarded Derek Lively and did a really good job with it. Guarded Daniel Gafford, did a good job with it. I thought Mobley's, he stepped up at the end of the playoffs where it kind of just had me raise my eyebrows a little bit. So I think that's the key matchup in this matchup with Celtics and Cavs. And then, as Will alluded to, Jaylen Brown, he's going to take all of your smaller wings into deep water, right? He's going to try and drown every single one of them. I think Garland, we're going to try and get him in foul trouble early. I would imagine Okoro will start on JB just because he has the physicality to match up with him. But it's the NBA. You never finish a possession guarding who you started on the possession, right? So I think that's what the Celtics will do to take advantage of it. And I would imagine, I just can't see the Cavs going 82-0. You know what I mean? They're gonna lose eventually.
That's a hot take. That's a hot take.
We keep saying that. And, yeah.
I'm picking the Celtics in this one, but I think the Cavs are a good team. I think I initially picked the Bucks to be in the Eastern Conference Finals this year, but I don't think that's happening anymore. So Cavs are definitely the team. They've caught my attention. I think that will be the Eastern Conference Finals this year. Yeah,
no, I agree with you. And, hopefully if both of our teams are having the success and kind of running away with the top two seeds of the East, we'll kind of connect and get back together throughout the season and see kind of where we are then. But Will, Greg, thank you so much for hopping on, and go Cavs. And we're back, Cavs fans. You just listened to our interview with the guys from Green with Envy, Will and Greg. Really appreciate them coming on. It was really fun talking about, the Celtics season to date and how they match up with this Cavs, we're about to have one of the biggest NBA games of the season Tuesday nights. If you're watching, you see we have a much more familiar face with me now, Skylar Webker. Me and Skylar just wrapped the post-game podcast where the Cavs went on to 15-0, and wanted to talk to you, Skylar, a little bit about this game. We don't normally do a whole episode around previewing a game, but this is obviously maybe the game of the year so far in the NBA, and so we wanted to give it its due. As you kind of, the little bit you probably watch the Celtics and obviously the lot you've watched the Cavs, what are you thinking about? What are you looking for in this game as maybe some of the keys or things that could maybe, determine the outcome one way or the other?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to really whose strengths are better. I think the Cavs are a much more balanced team between their smaller guards and their larger bigs, but where they're kind of thin and weak are what Boston's really good at, which is their long, lengthy wings. So I think it's going to be an absolute knock them down, drag them out, just brawl of a game. I think it's going to be a close game, a lot of momentum switching. Man, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, and you rightfully so. You should be excited. It should be a phenomenal game. They're inarguably the two best teams in the East so far this year, and two of the best teams in the NBA. And it is really interesting, the contrast between the teams. You said it, that the strongest point about Boston is their wings, Tatum and Brown. 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guys who are incredible two-way players. Something the Cavs truthfully just don't have on their roster. They have just about everything else, but that's the one thing they don't have. And I do think that's one of the keys for the Celtics. I think one of the keys for the Cavs, where the Cavs have a clear advantage, is inside with Mobley and Allen. Like, as great as Garland and Mitchell are, Derek White and Drew Holiday are two of the best guard defenders in the NBA. I could see them, they're not going to hold Mitchell and Garland completely down, but giving them a little bit of a hard time. But I don't think Al Horford or anybody on Boston can hold down Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And if the Cavs are going to win this game, I think that's the biggest key. That's where they win it the most, double doubles out of both Mobley and Allen and really controlling the paint on both ends.
Yeah, I agree. That's something that we probably needed from those guys in the series last year.
Yeah.
But we have a new coaching system that completely highlights and complements these guys. So I think they're up for the challenge this year. I'm looking at ESPN and they have kind of the match predictor. It's really a 50-50 split of, Cavs 48.7, where the Celtics are 51.3. So it's going to be even ESPN in Vegas is calling this one,
they don't know. They're flipping a coin like
middle.
Yeah, they're flipping a coin like the rest of us. Yeah, and I actually went back and looked at a few highlights from that playoff series last year because it just seems like another lifetime ago, and it's definitely a whole nother Cavs team ago, right? The Cavs were extremely beat up. Mitchell got hurt in that series. Garland was probably still eating through a straw at that point.
Yeah.
Jared Allen didn't play. Obviously, a lot of different role players in the team this year. And the thing that stood out to me, and we actually just talked about this in the post-game podcast, is that playoffs, Mitchell led them in scoring, I think, every game that he was healthy the whole game. And then Mobley did the other couple games. This year, the Cavs have not had the same leading scorer 2 consecutive games. You look it down. It's the same 4 or 5 guys, but they just rotate. None of them are the 2 games in a row. Really just speaks to how balanced this Cavs team is and how much, frankly, it's a total contrast of that playoff team last year that was so reliant on Mitchell and to a little bit lesser extent Mobley.
Agreed. I think if I was thinking about this earlier today, kind of gearing up for this, and if I had to put it, obviously the Celtics are the best team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
They're the measuring stick. They're the defending champions. Everyone is kind of saying, "Am I built to beat Boston?"
Yep.
So giving Boston their credit and their flowers. For sure. But if I had to put this Cavs team in perspective, this Cavs team this year in perspective, I think they feel to me like Boston 2 years ago when they made it to the finals against Golden State, but they had some long series to get there. Where last year they kind of walked their way to the finals.
Yeah.
So I think I would say this Cavs team reminds me a lot of that 2015, or not 2015. What decade is this? Jesus. That 2021, 21, 22.
I'm keeping that in. I'm not editing it out.
Sorry, my head's in. With this winning streak, my head is in 2016 right now.
It's a Sunday night. The Cavs have played basketball every day for 3 months. It seems like, I'm going to give you a break. What will be really telling for me and what I'm interested in is in the NBA, when, especially maybe the last decade or so, when a team is on top of the mountain, such as the Celtics were last year and coming into this year, it feels the other teams feel like they have to do things to match them. Like the Knicks did things to match Boston by getting, Mikal Bridges and filling out wing defenders to go against Tatum and Brown. Sixers kind of did the same thing, bringing in Paul George, and some other teams did the same. The Cavs didn't do that. The Cavs, you and I talked about this, like the Cavs are like, let's be the best version of ourselves and not worry about matching up with Boston. Let's worry about maximizing what we do, and Boston can worry about matching up with us. And so I'm really interested. That approach has been wildly successful so far this year, and we'll see if it can still be successful Tuesday night and what'll be their biggest test of the year so far.
I agree. I think they're not worried about how other teams play. They're worried about how they play. Some of the players made comments earlier this week. Oh, we're not the hunters, we're the hunted. I don't know if that's true. I think the streak is hunted. I think every team wants to beat the streak. But Boston is still the hunted because they're the hunted in the sense of every team wants to be where they are at the end of the season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you're the defending champions and you bring back virtually the same roster, you're gonna have a target on you, and Boston does, and rightfully so, because frankly they were the best team in the NBA pretty much wire to wire last year. They were phenomenal, had one of the more dominant years in recent memory, if you include regular season and playoffs. But haven't been quite as dominant this year. Still very good, but they obviously are. The one thing that will be interesting to compare whatever happens Tuesday night versus later in the season is the Celtics are still going to be without Kristaps Porzingis. He was such a key for them last year. He obviously will be a key going up against the Cavs because they don't have really anybody else that matches up with the Cavs interior guys. So I think Tuesday night, that could be a huge hole that the Cavs exploit. But if he does come back healthy, that could be yet another challenge the Cavs have when they face Boston a little bit later.
Yeah, that's because I think their only other big is Al Horford.
And they got Luke Cornett.
That's the other one.
Yeah. Solid role player center, but not a Jared Allen or Evan Mobley, that's for sure.
Right. That's the other thing with this Cavs team, though, is let's say Boston sees that game plan and they attack Mobley and Allen. This Cavs team is built and balanced so that they have so multifaceted that they find other ways to win. And that obviously is still going to be put to the test against the Celtics. But that's what we've had so far, 15 games into the season, is that they're not winning the same way every night. They're not, just Mitchell out shooting everybody every night. It's really impressive that they're winning by either defense or blowout wins or comeback wins or bench contributions, leading the league in points off turnover. They're really so multifaceted that I'm confident, and I think that they are built to beat Boston. But now it's just time to kind of do the test, pen to paper.
Right. Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah,
exactly.
The one other thing I'm really looking forward to this game, I'm really looking forward to the game that Kenny Atkinson has, because we've sung his praises, and rightfully so. He's been phenomenal this year with everything he's done. But this is a game he's going to have to scheme a little bit against Boston, because what Boston does, if any Cavs fans haven't watched them much, they love doing what you call an inverted pick and roll, where they usually have Tatum, if not Jaylen Brown, but it's usually Tatum with the ball, and have one of their guards, like a Derek White or Drew Holiday, set a screen for him so that the other team's point guard has to. And I love Darius Garland to death. I think he's been an all-star so far this year. I will admit that he cannot guard Jason Tatum. So if that's the action they are going to run, what does Kenny Atkinson do to combat that? Does he, dream up a defensive scheme to, switch that or rotate? I don't know if you've noticed, but at least the last 2 or 3 games, they've been going to a zone for decent portions of the game. I mean, that's dangerous to do against Boston because the way they shoot the 3, but to at least give him a different look for a while, I could see him doing that. But it'll be a lot about how well the Cavs play defensively when the Celtics force them into mismatches.
Yeah, I think this might be the best coach that Kenny Atkinson has gone up against all year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. When I was talking to the guys from Green with Envy, I told them we'll have to do another pod because I have so many Joe Mazzulla questions. Like Joe Mazzulla went from 2 years ago, he was probably the biggest question mark coach in the league, to now regarded as one of the top coaches in the league. Like, and I don't know if that's his development or just media overreaction one way or the other, but he has turned into a strength of their team, same way Kenny Atkinson has quickly turned into a strength of their team for the Cavs. And it'll be a very good matchup, not only on the floor, but, on the benches with the coaches kind of going against each other.
Yeah. And I don't know what Boston, I don't know why they're like a coaching factory. Brad Stevens was amazing when he was their coach. And then he moved up to their president of basketball operations.
Yeah.
And then who would they have the other year? He was really good.
Ime Odoma. Ime. Yeah. He's doing a great job on Houston now.
Yeah. And then they bring in this question mark of Joe Mazzulla, and he's wonderful. Like, I don't know how Boston is just a coaching factory.
Well, that is a little bit recency bias. Once upon a time, they did hire Rick Pitino, and that didn't go quite as well.
All right, that's true. Recency bias on this one.
But no, you're right. They have had several strong coaches in a row, and a lot of that, I would say, is probably like very strong ownership and strong front office, which is now Brad Stevens, as you said, and put a lot of faith in Joe Mazzulla. Like on the Bill Simmons podcast, they used to refer to him as second row Joe because he wasn't even the head assistant on the main bench. He was on the second row, and he went from that to head coach kind of on a whim, and to his winning a championship in his second year, and then having him in a really good position in his third year to go back and contend. But yeah, man, it's gonna be an awesome game. It's NBA games. Basketball in the NBA is always awesome. There are certain matchups throughout the year, whether it's, the storyline, such as when Clay went back to Golden State last week. It was a huge game that actually lived up to the hype. Or you just get two teams that have pretty clearly distinguished themselves from the rest of the Eastern Conference at this point in the season. Like they're the best two teams in the East, and you'd have a really hard time arguing otherwise. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up, see how, they go against each other's strengths, how they try and hide their own weaknesses. And I honestly, I'm kind of with ESPN. I think 51% Boston, they're home and they're the defending champions. I'm fine giving them that extra 1%. I think the Cavs can practically just as likely win the game. And I hope it's a game that lives up to the billing one way or the other. I hope both teams play well, everybody stays healthy, and we get a heck of a game Tuesday night. And thankfully it's nationally broadcast because the NBA hasn't been doing as good a job this year with that.
I'm also okay if it's like when the Golden State came to town and we just ran them off the floor. I'm okay with that also. How great would that be as a Cavs fan, though? Like beating Boston by 30, 40 points. That feels so good.
I don't know if Cavs fans can stick their chests out anymore, but they certainly would try if that were to happen.
But what you said, this. I think this is a game that the whole league has circled.
Yeah, sure.
I think the three teams that have separated themselves from everybody else are the Thunder, the Celtics, and the Cavs. I think those are the three teams that have ascended beyond every other team in the league, and it's early in the season for that, but I think the whole league has this game circled to see, is Cleveland as good as their record shows? Are the Celtics as good or better than what their record shows?
Yeah, no, I agree, man. It should be a heck of a game. Really look forward to watching, to recapping. I won't be on Tuesday. I am in the midst of moving, so I'm going to be taking the next couple off. Skylar and Tim are going to take care of it, but I will certainly make sure I watch and shoot these guys a couple texts with my thoughts. Probably a lot of texts will be flying around Tuesday nights. But with that, Skylar, thanks so much for hanging out even longer today, doing this with me. We'll get out of here on that. And everybody, make sure you watch Tuesday night. Should be the game of the year so far in the NBA. So with that, for Skylar Webker, I'm Kevin Lynch. Thanks for listening.
Go Cavs.